you have these relationships then, and you have this work that has been ongoing, so that by the time you get to 1950s then, we find that as race in the United States is entering a new phase, that at the beginning of the decade, black and white relations throughout the United States were defined by either legalized and de facto systems of segregation. De facto systems of segregation in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York, in Boston. In other words, when we say de facto, there's no law saying you got to segregate, but you got all this segregation going on. There's no law that says that backing you for discrimination, but you got it going on in these northern urban areas, you see. In the South, it's legalized. It's legal. It is law. So at the beginning of the 1950s then, black and white relations throughout the United States were defined by legalized and de facto systems of segregation. As a result then of the litigation carried out by the NAACP, a number of legal victories were won during the 1930s and 40s that paved the way for the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision. Now, one of the things, too, that I do in Jesus, Jobs, and Justice, we all appreciate the NAACP, but the NAACP alone, just with a legal approach, could not break down those walls, okay? But what was important about the NAACP, the NAACP systematically worked throughout the 20th century up to 1950 to restore those parts of the 14th Amendment that had been abridged in the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court decision. Okay, all of you familiar with Plessy versus Ferguson? If not, you ought to go and read about it after we leave, okay? Brown, 1954, reversed then the separate but equal doctrine established by Plessy, okay? So the Supreme Court had ruled in 1896 that separate but equal is legal, you see? And so it is reversed in the Brown case. The basic precedent is reversed. And so, as we're coming into this period then, the NAACP has been important in that area, but all these other organizations working in other areas are the troops too that are helping to hammer down those walls. And we have to see the relationships. It's not either or. The Brown decision was aimed at public school education. However, it was used by the NAACP and others to attack legal segregation in all areas of public life. The Brown decision ushered in a new era of public debate and activism. Anticipating the decision, in November 1953, Church Women United went on record favoring the desegregation of public schools and working at the local level throughout the South and through their religious groups to get the population ready to deal with it. Church Women United responded to the Brown decision in June 1954 by developing strategies for implementing it. Well, I found that over in Church Women United. I found in the AME, African Methodist Episcopal Church, General Conference minutes, as well as the Women's Missionary Society's minutes, you see, the ways in which they were engaging their people and getting them ready, particularly the women. Now, when you look at the AME Church leadership, which was predominantly male, when you look at the National Baptist Convention leadership, which was practically all male, at that time, of course, people have cited the National Baptist Convention and say, well, you know, James Jackson, and the National Baptist Convention, they sat out the civil rights movement because Jackson said he didn't believe in people being out there protesting and doing all those things. They don't need to be doing that. And of course, that's why Martin Luther King Jr., left the National Baptist Convention and founded Progressive National Baptist Convention. But the same was true. People don't cite the AME Church, and I was surprised to find out that the AME Church leadership, males, were just as bad. Okay? They too, and I take that on, and my AME friends are not terribly happy because I make the point that, you know, they always like to talk about Richard Allen. And yes, we were the first, he was the first to lead civil rights movement and so forth and so on. So we've been in the movement all along. Well, the church and Daisy Bates singled them out. She asked, where are the angry black men in the AME church? She couldn't even get AME ministers to work with her and to support those students with the Little Rock situation. And it was shameful. Okay, because she was a woman leading the state NAACP. So I mean, I deal with all of those things, and I just want to give you a little piece of that, though, so you can understand. Going back to what I said at the beginning, the struggle that black women have on all the fronts. They aren't just fighting racism. Because I make the argument in the earlier part of the book, you got to see black women as bound by chains on both sides. Bound by the chains of race on this side, bound by the chains of sex on this side. Take the chains of race off, and she's still got a problem. Take the chains of sex off, and she's still got a problem. So she's still not free. So therefore, they early on made very clear, if you go and read the minutes in 1896 for the NACW as you start, they made very clear that they understood what their struggle was and where it was, you see. But they could not separate themselves from their community. They couldn't separate themselves from their families, you see. So their struggle was particularly difficult and continues to be within their own community.